Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and Tim, thank you very much for inviting me to be here this morning. I'm very conscious that I will not have the detailed knowledge that you have through your work in the Surrey Heartlands and in the fields of hospitals and care. What I do have is an experience of living in Surrey for 40 years in Walton-on-Thames and then in Guildford, and for some 30 years being a part-time and then a full-time judge. This is a beautiful county. I'm going to give a personal overview, as invited by Tim to do so, and some perceptions of what I found in my 10 months so far as the High Sheriff of the county, which has given me and my wife a really wonderful opportunity to go around and meet lots and lots of people. I thought I knew the county quite well, having lived here for this length of time, and having been aware, for example, of the deprived areas through cases coming to the courts, either the county courts or the criminal courts. And I knew, therefore, where there were difficult areas of deprivation. But over the past 10 months, I have learnt so much more, not just about those areas, but about the people of the county. It's a physically beautiful county, and it has an amazing number of charities, volunteers, and people who are doing some absolutely superb work. But one of the things that has struck me is the deprived areas still exist. I remember it was in 2008 at the Crown Court in Guildford that the report Hidden Surrey was launched. And that shocked people. It certainly surprised many people, because people were able to read the research that showed the deprivation, that showed the areas of poverty and illiteracy. And the perception of this county always having been one of prosperity and affluence, that was what struck people. That was followed up by Surrey Uncovered a few years later, and not a lot had changed. The Community Foundation for Surrey, which was behind those two reports and for which I've had some very minor involvement with for many years, has done incredible work. But I just wonder, and you may know better than I, how deprived our county still is in those areas, the same areas. I feel that the needs are just as much as they were in 2008 when that first report came out. There is masses of work being done, and there is masses still to be done. What has struck me immediately is the number of food banks. I think there are some 34, maybe more, that I know of. The community fridges and the amazing work that they're doing and the need for them. The warm hubs. Let's face it, the last 3 years have been an extremely difficult one for the country and indeed for this county. Many people came out as volunteers, retired people or others, to deliver food packages to, for example, around Mole Valley from the Mid-Surrey Community Fridge set up in Dorking. And people did come out, and it was heartening to see that. But they're still needed in these cold days. Fortunately, it's not been too bad a winter. The family centres, for example, in Stanwell, the work that they're doing all around the county is central. The next real point that's come home to me is the number of comments that have been made from in the police, when I've talked to members of the police, right through to teachers in schools. Mental health. Mental health is a huge problem, and it has been, unfortunately, increasing in the numbers of people affected because of the COVID pandemic and lockdowns in particular. I've spoken to teachers in primary schools. In fact, my younger daughter is a special needs teacher, and she tells me about the very small 4 or 5-year-olds who weren't able to start school when they would normally have done so, and they're finding it very difficult to adjust. And that surprised me. And it's teenagers. I've had contact, for example, with Emerge Advocacy and the wonderful work they do, helping teenagers who have got anxiety problems and feeling suicidal. And it's Catalyst, it's Oakleaf, it's Transform, it's Matrix, it's Surrey Wellbeing Partnership. I've met and talked to them, and all the time I hear more and more discussion about how can we cope with the mental health difficulties. I was at a conference in London organised by the High Sheriff of Greater London, and I heard our Police and Crime Commissioner and a consultant psychiatrist and others talking about the mental health problems. There just aren't enough qualified people to help those who need the help. The mental health resources need much greater input. Consultants just cannot cope, and so the resources there are plainly needed. I'm a trustee of Surrey Clubs for Young Persons, and over the last 3 years I've been able to discover how, with the closure of youth clubs because of not being able to associate, that's led to problems. I'm not saying it's resulted in more people going into county lines, but the more you can have organised places for people of that age, teenagers, to get together, the less the chance is that they will get into gangs. I know that from my criminal law experiences. So there's much work needed to support the youth clubs in the county in order to keep people, as it were, away from getting into bad habits. The health service, what I can mention is this, that first of all, I know something about the prostate project and what a wonderful organisation and how much that has done to raise awareness and also funds for people who are suffering from prostate and to warn men about it. But I've also found out when talking to police officers that police officers are having to spend a great deal of time with somebody who has perhaps needed to be sectioned, and they are spending hours, 10 to 12 hours, sometimes 24 hours with that person in their home, waiting for a decision to be made about whether they can be sectioned. And those police officers should be out on the beat. They should not be doing that sort of work. We need more people, it seems to me, from what I've been told and what I've heard, in the NHS who can get out and help in those particular areas. It's all about resources again. Violence. Domestic abuse. One of my themes as High Sheriff, my principal theme has been concerned with domestic abuse, because the Lord Lieutenant asked me in 2019 to chair a focus group on domestic abuse in this county. And so I and the members of that focus group have met all the people who work in the refuges across the county. It's a growing problem. Again, it grew during lockdowns with the stresses and strains. We need more refuges, more help there. There's been so much more pressure on people in the last 3-4 years, economic and just the mental problems that have come. And yet there are a tremendous number of volunteers all around the county. We need more. There are many, many people retired, obviously living in Surrey, who have the time, who are comfortable in financial terms. We need to somehow recruit them, more of them, to get out and help people. The charities, as I've mentioned, they're doing a tremendous amount of work, amazing work. They need to have more links, liaise more together. The Surrey Wellbeing Partnership is an example of what can be achieved. I'm full of admiration for everything that Community Foundation for Surrey does. It's raised huge sums of money and philanthropists. But I'm afraid to say, and I know this from talking to other High Sheriffs and seeing information and data, that this county is not one of the most generous when it comes to giving. It should be, because it is a very affluent county, as I say. In short, the demands are going on. More and more links and partnerships are absolutely necessary, it seems to me. I'm just a layperson compared to you, giving you my personal views on what I've come across. I found it absolutely uplifting, as has my wife, to meet the people that we have done, working so hard and giving so much, often for very little for themselves, if anything. But without them, the hardships across this county would just be unbelievably appalling. As it is, there's lots of work to be done. I can make very positive comments about all that I've seen, and I do. And I thank everybody who is working so hard in this county, if I may, as the High Sheriff. I sincerely thank you for all the work that you're doing, often in very difficult circumstances with your own stresses and strains. There's so much to do. It's a question of prioritising what you need to do. And this day today seems to me to be an example day of a way of going forward and getting so much more done and so much more achieved. So Thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope you have a very good day today.